Hello everyone and welcome to today's Friday with Vistage webinar. Before we begin, I'd like to go over some items to help you participate in today's webinar. If you're experiencing technical difficulties joining this session, please dial support at 1-800-259-8414. When you join today's webinar, you selected to join either by phone call or computer audio. If you would like to change your selection, you can do so by accessing your audio pane in your control panel. During the presentation, all participants will be in listen-only mode. You will have the opportunity to submit text questions to today's presenters by typing your questions into the questions pane of the control panel. You may send in your questions at any time. We will collect these and address them during the Q&A session at the end of today's presentation. Please note that a PDF of today's presentation is available for download on your control panel. A recording of this presentation will be sent to attendees via email within 1 week's time. And now I'd like to introduce the moderator for today's webinar, Bill Black.
Welcome to Fridays with Vistage. My name is Bill Black. I'm a fellow Vistage member and your moderator today. Today's webinar title is Fire Your Website: How Lack of Content Can Kill Your Leads. Would you hire a salesperson that never generates any new leads and sales? The answer is no, so why would you let your website get away with it? This webinar takes an in-depth look at website content and its impact on your search visibility. We'll show you how to evaluate who your online competitors truly are and how to overcome digital targeting challenges to generate more leads and sales from your website. Our speaker today is Tyler Yost. He is the Director of Client Services of Blue Corona, which helps small and medium-sized businesses grow faster than their competition using next-generation technologies. Blue Corona is now a 6-time Inc. 5000 recipient and has helped hundreds of businesses grow by providing the highest value marketing services to their clients. Ladies and gentlemen, Tyler Yost.
Thanks, Bill, and thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon. I'm really excited to share this presentation with you and hopefully make this one of your best Fridays with Vistage that you've attended. Like Bill mentioned, we're going to cover a lot of ground today. We're going to talk about your online competition. We're going to talk about why you should fire your website if it's not helping you generate leads, and then what you should do about that. And I want you to leave with some really practical tools to be able to do that. We're all about growth here at Vistage, and so I want to be able to add some more subject matter expertise and give you guys the tools to help make that happen. So today I want to accomplish 3 big things, and I want you to leave with them. The first is I want to give you a useful framework for digital competitive analysis, and we'll talk about why that's important in just a couple of slides here. We're going to talk, number 2, about how content is more than just words. Content marketing is this phrase that's been thrown around pretty willy-nilly over the last several years and become kind of popular, but I want to really diagnose what that means and how it's impactful for your business. We really want to help drive to more leads, and content's just a great way for us to do that. And number 3, and this is something I'm really excited to share today, is the 5 key reasons for top what we call search visibility. At Blue Corona, we commissioned a study where we looked at over 2,000 companies and 500,000 keywords, and we looked across 25 different factors as to why those companies would rank for those keywords. And today I'm actually going to share with you the top 5 reasons that we found that lead to that. So it's going to be hopefully a pretty big, wow, I didn't know that, an aha moment for you. And so before we get into all of this, I want to share with you an insight that I've been getting as I've been meeting Vistage members and speaking to different groups. And one of those is that it's really amazing that there are so many people making decisions about your business based on your online presence. They're making decisions whether or not to hire you as a company, whether or not to come work for you. We know that with the Vistage survey, there's a significant portion of members who are looking to improve their employee rosters, or whether to invest in your company. And they're making those decisions, maybe not wholly, but at least in part, based on your online presence. It's usually one of the wow factors we get after we talk through some of this. And how that gets layered on even more is that not only are those decisions being made about you, but they're also being made about you and your competitors. And we're really all competing for those same resources. And so as we're talking to Vistage members and getting them to say, yeah, I guess you're right. They are making decisions based on my website, maybe not everything, but some. And yeah, we are competing for the same resources. How do I even look at my competitors? How do I navigate that landscape? And so what I'm going to do is we're going to talk through very briefly a framework that we've created that helps us navigate that, helps us navigate this world of big data we're in a very simple to understand way. If you've been here with us during our other Fridays with Vistage webinars, you've seen this before, but this has been a really impactful tool for members all across the country to be able to get an understanding of who are my competitors, what are they doing online, and how can I beat them, right? At the end of the day, that's what we want. Where I was meeting with the chair, a Vistage chair earlier this week who said, you know, everyone's got competition. So the real question is, how do I take their lunch money? So let's talk about that briefly. And then we're going to talk very specifically about what we call content and search visibility. And those are actually going to come up as we go through the framework. All right. So the great part about this framework is that we have applied it to over 2,000 companies. So this isn't something brand new that we are whipping up and trying to test out on the Vistage audience. This is something that we have battle tested, and we've seen a lot of really great results out of it and get amazing insights out of it. So as we look at it from a summary level, it's got 5 key parts. And so I want to go through all 5 of those briefly before we dive really deep into 2 of them. Now this is a summary level analysis. This doesn't go very deep. We have some Vistage members who hire us to do very, very detailed ones, but this is a really great way to get at least a very high level understanding of what that looks like. So the first piece that we like to look at is what we call tracking and analytics. And tracking and analytics is the net that surrounds your entire digital presence. It really helps measure who's coming to your website or your social media presences or any other place that you have on the web. How are they using it? How are they interacting with it? And this is really important because it allows us to see who in your competitive landscape has a sophisticated tool set and what do we think that they're doing. What's usually an aha moment is that all of this data is publicly available. So I can tell you who in your competitive landscape has what tools and how many tools they have and what do we think that they're doing with all of those. And that helps us get at least a little bit of insight as to what they're doing and also what they're not doing. After capturing data for 2,000 companies, we've got a pretty good idea of what a pretty decent size of the universe of all the tracking analytics tools are. So we can also then start to pinpoint, hey, there are some areas where some of my competition may not be participating in a way that I would have expected and helps give us a competitive advantage. And so as we build that, we produce it as just a very simple report where we can look at, with a stacked bar chart, what are the tracking analytics capabilities of you and your competition? How many tools that you have, and as I mentioned, we know, if I know the count, I know what's underlying them. So for most Vistage members, they start with something simple like Google Analytics, which is really great. Maybe add on something like Google remarketing or Facebook remarketing, or if they're B2B, LinkedIn remarketing. And then we can just really start to see what that tool set looks like. I was meeting with a Vistage member to review one of these maybe 2 weeks ago now, and one of their competitors had 59 tools. And as we were able to start to peel through it, we realized that they had a whole suite of people who manage those tools. They had 3 people on, their competitor had 3 people on staff to manage all those tools. So, you know, they didn't have the budget to help afford that, but it helps give us that insight of, all right, how are they approaching it and who do we chase? And so this little piece of the pie helps give us that, again, good understanding of what's going on here. Our second piece of the pie is what we call it website accessibility. So if you were here with our Fridays with Vistage webinar on August the 25th, we talked really in depth, very much in depth about website accessibility. We covered 3 parts: your website's speed, your website's mobile friendliness, and your website's security. So your website speed is how fast does it load, and the tools are involved with that. Your website's mobile friendliness became a part of the Google algorithm back in 2015, and it's actually going to become a very significant part of it in 2018. And website security, actually at that point, when I gave that presentation, we alluded to the fact that Google Chrome was going to start rolling out some updates for unsecure websites. And they've actually begun to do that earlier this month. So that's where that comes in. And so as we look at that, again, we're able to layer on top what is happening in the competitive landscape. So in this example, we could see that every member of the competitor landscape has what we would call a mobile-friendly website, very easy to use on a mobile phone. That's what the happy green iPhones on the bottom are. But then what we also see on top of that is companies C and D have a secure website. And with Equifax data breaches and what's happening in the news, it's becoming more and more prevalent to ask about website security, and it's becoming an expectation for consumers, whether they're if you're a B2B or B2C, that's becoming a common element there. And so that's our second part, website accessibility. So part one, tracking and analytics. Part two, website accessibility. And then what we're going to spend the bulk of our time together today talking about is website content, and the next section, which is what we call search visibility. And so when we look at website content, we measure it by looking at the number of pages you have on your website, and your competitors do, the average number of words per page. We like to look at if there are inbound links to your website, how many they are, if you're blogging and how many blogs per month are happening. And these are all, we'll talk about these more in depth. These are all a great way to get a basic understanding of what's happening in the competitive landscape. So we could see with a real example here that company C is doing something significant, adding a lot, 200,000 pages to the website. And what we found after we looked at this is that they actually had something broken on their website that was causing this to happen. So this is really a competitor that was making an investment. It looked in making their website bigger, looked like something had gone wrong. And this is, again, an opportunity for this Vistage member to be able to really take advantage of some of that opportunity there and really go forward. And so that's what we talk about when we look at website content from again, a very high level summary view. And then that really parlays well into what we call website search visibility. And for those of you who want to get more leads from the web, this needs to be a vital part of your toolkit. And we'll talk about why very extensively here in a little bit. But for us, when we measure search visibility, we like to look at the 200 keywords that matter most for your business, and what percentage of those do you rank on page number 1 of Google for. All three of those parts are very important. We're going to talk about that. And as we're beginning to measure that, our output begins to give us a percentage. So again, out of those 200, what percentage of those are you ranking on the page 1 of Google? And as we see here, this Vistage member has some pretty good search visibility, around 20%. We actually, with most Vistage members, we see somewhere between the 10 and 25% as we do an initial look, which is really great. And company C here, again, it was that same company in the last slide that had something broken with their website. It still has some good search visibility. That's how we knew they were making an investment into improving the content in their website, just had something go wrong in the process. And then so as we go back to the framework, part 1 is tracking and analytics, part 2 is website accessibility, part 3 is content, part 4 is search visibility, and the final part, and we're actually going to talk about it our next Fridays with Vistage webinar, is social audience and reviews. And this is important for several reasons, but as we look at measuring it, we like to look at the size of the audience to start. And as we look at reviews, how many reviews and the average number of reviews. And so for B2C businesses, Facebook's a great avenue to build a wide followership, not necessarily for organic sharing, but for paid sharing and really using that as a way to generate more business, as well as if you're B2B, LinkedIn's a great place to have that happen. And as we've been meeting with Vistage members, it's a very underutilized network and something that can definitely has a lot of upside opportunity to it. All right, so number 1, it's important to know that people are making decisions about your business, whether to work for you, whether to work with you as a customer, whether to invest in your business based on your online presence. And unfortunately, you're competing for those same kinds of resources with your competitors. So we put together this summary level framework to be able to give a quick understanding of not only each segment of the pie here, but as we put all 5 of them together, we get a really rich understanding of what's happening in the competitive landscape. Who is making some significant investment? Is anyone making a significant investment? And that always leads us to the action of what are we going to do about that, or how can we use that to our advantage? So like I mentioned, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about content and search visibility. Like Bill mentioned in the intro, if you've got a salesperson who's not producing, depending on how you structure their compensation, they're either going to leave on their own or you're going to fire them. And we feel the same way about websites. We've always been trying to align with our customers in their goals as we're producing web strategies. So we always have been aligned to generating more leads and generating more sales in about the 10 years that we've been in business. And so we always like to measure our success in the number of leads that we're producing from all the campaigns that we're running. And so today, we're going to talk about how content and search visibility have a significant impact on those. And that's really where they fit into this entire framework. So as we talk about search visibility, we're going to talk specifically about what we would call organic search visibility, not paid search visibility. There's a lot of different reasons why, and we could follow up on that later. But what we're going to start with is, normally as I go through this, I like to talk through content and then search visibility. I'm actually going to go in reverse. So we're going to begin with search visibility first and then content second. And that's because search visibility is the output and content is one of very many inputs. And again, these are all important because we want to help drive more traffic to your website, because more traffic equals more leads equals more sales. Actually, if I say it a little bit better, more qualified traffic, more traffic that's targeted and intent, has high intent, equals to more lead and more sales. And we look to looking at search visibility, and we like to focus on that first because that's where your prospective customers or prospective employees have intent. They're searching for something that you can solve. Every single day, there are 6.5 billion searches on Google alone. So there is a pretty good chance that there is at least one person out there searching for what it is that you provide every single day. And so we like to look at search visibility because if you're not being shown for any of those searches, you're not going to get that traffic. You don't get that traffic, you're not going to get those leads, and you're not getting those sales. And oftentimes, as we're looking at a competitive landscape, we see that your competitors are actually the ones who are getting those, all that traffic and the leads and sales. That's why we see them growing. So as I mentioned in the introduction, as we measure search visibility, we're looking at the top 10 rankings on Google for 200 target keywords for your website. And that's important because it gives us a big enough sample to be more correct, but it also keeps it narrow enough where it's manageable and we can look at it. And top 10 is important because 80% of all of the clicks that happen on Google happen on the first page in those top 10 rankings. Actually, 70% happen in the top 5, but we like to look at the top 10 because that's at least a great place to start, and we know that's where the eyeballs all are. And what we've seen is that 70% of all web traffic comes from search. So like I mentioned, 6.5 billion searches every single day on Google alone. There's a lot of traffic that comes from search. And if you're looking to grow your business and get more leads, which based on the title of this presentation, I hope that you are, this is a very large place that you need to consider and be participating in. And like I mentioned last, the click-through rates of the searches diminishes every single time we go down the list. So typically we've seen About 70% of those clicks happen in the first 5 and 80% on the first page. So that's why it's so important to be there. If you're not going to be found, you're not going to get there. And that's why search visibility, again, is important, but it's also an output, where content is one of the things that we can take advantage of and we have control over to help get us that output. So let's spend some time talking about what content is, and we're also going to share, I also want to share some insights with you on that big study I talked about at the beginning, where we looked at over 500,000 keywords and what we saw out of it. So what do I mean by content? Like I mentioned at the beginning, content marketing is a phrase that just gets tossed around pretty, I don't know, at this point, willy-nilly. But what does content really mean? Is it just text on the page? And we've seen a lot of different ways that our clients and Vistage members have won on the web with good content, beyond just words on the page, with things like case studies about example work that they've done. Blog posts are a great way to highlight some of that. Gallery pages and even white papers. These are some, I would say, blog posts are pretty typical, but case studies, white papers, gallery, a little bit atypical from what we've seen. We have one Vistage member who's a client of ours in Houston, and the most common question they get is, when they have somebody call in, a prospect call in, is, can you do this kind of work? It's very high-end work, and they've been in business long enough that they can do anything. They have done everything, but that's the most common question they get. And one of the big opportunities for them is to highlight some of that great work they've done via case studies and white papers on their website, and really give their audience some, what I would call, nurturing content as they're making their decision. It's a very high-end product. It requires a little bit of time and research to make the decision on it. That's a great way to do it. On the flip side, we've seen companies like home service companies, think of like a plumber or an HVAC company, take advantage of something like a gallery, where I as a homeowner and husband, my wife, she calls, she likes to know who's coming over to our house to repair the toilet, if that's the case. And so a gallery is a great place to show off your team, or show off some of the work you have if it's more visual, if you're an architect, anything that's really more visual. And so there's a lot of ways to, again, look at content beyond just the simple words on a page, and how they can help get you more. And as we measure content, we like to look at 4 key factors. So the first we're going to look at is the number of website pages. So think of your website like a piece of property, right? The number of website pages is the length of the property, and the next one, the average number of words per page, is the depth of your piece of property, the size of what you've got, and what we call your online real estate. And the number of web pages and the average words per page are actually very important, and we're going to talk about why that is in a few slides here. But they're a great way for us to get a simple understanding of how many pages do you have on your website, what's on those pages, and what are your competitors doing, and how are they participating in content marketing, and is that getting them anything, right? That's where we get to search visibility as the output. We also like to look at if you have a blog or not, and the frequency of blog posts, for 2 reasons. One, they help understand if you're able to get any search visibility from those. It's another way to make that happen. But 2, it's also predictive for what the future size of their website is going to be. What we've seen time and time again is if you're putting up 4 blog posts a month, every month for 3 years, there's a pretty good chance you're going to continue doing that. Oftentimes, though, what we'll see, especially as we're doing these competitive analyses, is that everyone puts up about 1 or 2 blog posts somewhere between the 27th and the 30th of the month, probably just to check an item off their list. But regardless, it gives us a great predictor for how big that future website is going to be, and what does that mean relative to the search visibility. And all of this drives back to the point that we want to use content to help drive more search visibility, because more search visibility and higher search visibility equals more traffic equals more leads and more sales. We always want more dollars in the pocket, and especially with search, with there only being 10 spots, it's going in somebody's pocket, and we really want it to be all of our Vistage member friends rather than their competitors. And so now I want to switch gears a little bit and actually share with you some of the insights that we've gleaned as we, again, did that big study. So if you weren't paying attention at the beginning, what we looked at is we looked at over 2,000 companies and over 500,000 keywords, 500,000 keywords, and the search visibility for every single one of those keywords and how it worked for all of those companies. Now, granted, they were in pools, so not every company had 500,000. We're averaging about 250 keywords per company here. And we wanted to look at 25 different input factors to see which are the ones that had the highest correlation with search visibility. Now, I don't work at Google, so I don't know all of the back end of their algorithm, and the way they've built their algorithm now is it also includes AI as part of it. So trying to outsmart a computer that's probably smarter than me is not going to be my, I'm not going to win at that game. But what I can do is start to understand what some of the correlative efforts are that we see with that. So as we looked at all those keywords, what we found is very few of those companies actually had high search visibility. And so what we did is we lopped off everyone who had greater than 50% search visibility, and we wanted to get an understanding of those factors. What were the important ones? Look at the best and chase what they have. And so we found 5 key factors that were common. One that was common amongst a few, and then the remaining 4 were common amongst the rest. So the first factor that we saw was what we call a low competition market. So again, if you're a plumber in Roswell, New Mexico, I apologize if there are any plumbers from Roswell, New Mexico on the call today, but you're in a low competition market, right? Roswell has a decent number of residents, but not a lot of plumbers. So a low competition market. And if you're here today, you're probably in a high competition market because you're looking for more leads. So that's one that we could just throw right out. But the remaining 4 factors were also pretty interesting. Company longevity was one of the primary factors that we saw, again, have a very high correlation. And that not meaning website longevity, but how long have you been in actual business, right? How long, so as Blue Corona, we've been around for a little over 10 years now. And how long have you been in business for? And what we saw is companies that were in business longer actually did better, which was, again, very interesting, but something we can't control because we started the business when we started the business. Now we get into 3 that you can have active control over. The first one is the vast majority of those who weren't in a low competition market had actually a new website. So to me, what was really surprising is company longevity being a search factor that was important. I always assumed website longevity would have been it, but actually company longevity was part of it. The third one here, having a new website, I thought there was something about that, but again, it was a little bit surprising, and most of them were under 2 years old. The next factor that we looked at was what we would call variation targeting. And this is really important and aligns back to something we've been saying, but now we finally have the data to back it up. I think an important aha moment that we typically get as we're talking to Vistage members is that as we're trying to win on Google and win that 70% of all web traffic, it's important to know that Google and all the search engines rank web pages and not web sites. So a website is a collection of web pages, but Google doesn't rank your entire website. It ranks a specific web page and all of your web pages as individual entities. And this is really where variation targeting does a great job. So back to that Vistage member that's in Houston, that they have all of these different case studies of all this different work that they've done that makes it very easy for us to then create all of that different variation targeting. They've created a lot of different, provide a lot of different services and varied products along the way, and that really helps create what we would call that variation targeting, where we've got we've got different ways that we can share the types of work that we've done or the types of work that we do. So instead of just one page talking about all the different wealth management services that you might provide if you're a wealth management firm, or the staffing solutions, if you're a healthcare staffing, and I think that's a great example. A lot of Vistage members are in that industry. There are different kinds of healthcare staffing. So highlighting each of those variations as their own unique page, that's really where variation targeting comes in. And the last one, and this is, I thought this was like this was a big high five all around our office when we outlined this. This is what we would call content depth and breadth. Back to what we looked at in the competitive analysis framework. How many pages do you have, and what's your average words per page? Actually, average words per page had, of all the content factors, had the highest correlation. And I come from a statistics background, so I mean, our p-value was super low on that one. So if you're in that is a place that was a great aha moment for us, and something that was really excited, but something, again, we can take advantage of here. So the 2 we can't do anything with: low competition market and company longevity. The 3 we can do anything with is a new website. We're not going to talk about that today, but that is something that, again, was an interesting insight. Variation targeting and content depth and breadth can actually be tackled at the same time. So as we can overlay content depth onto variation targeting, which helps us build that breadth, the number of pages that we have on our website. So as I mentioned a few slides back, as we're measuring content, we're looking at 4 key parts. We're looking at the number of website pages, ding, 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 average number of words per page, blog or no blog, and frequency of blog posts. And adding to that content depth and breadth, number of pages, average words per page. So that's some serious firepower there. And I actually wanted to show you a couple of examples that we saw using our competitive analysis framework that we've seen that help highlight some of these insights. So here's a great example of a competitive landscape. Now it has 6 competitors, or 5 competitors, excuse me, in addition to the Vistage member. And company B has 15,000, almost 16,000 pages, 1,800 words per page. They are the landscape leader in both of those. And surely what happened? Boom, 70% search visibility. I mean, they had everything going right. As we were talking about this with this Vistage member, the real answer was through everything. Because we wanted to win search visibility, through everything company C, D, E, and some of what F are doing away, and chase what company B is doing, and then we can add our own variations to that. They clearly have a playbook that's winning, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can just make it better, faster, stronger. And that's a great example of how all this comes together. Same thing with this example as we were going through it. Again, this is a look at the website's content, the number of pages, words per page, inbound links, number of blogs. This is actually a really unique example in that company C has 26 blogs per month. They are blogging like crazy people. I mean, most competitive landscapes we see 1 to 3 on average blogs per month. These company C is doing more than 1 blog per business day. I mean, it was obscene. But what we found out is that company C didn't know what they were doing. They were just blogging the blog. They were the blind leading the blind, because company B here still has the best search visibility of this competitive landscape. And that really leads us to, I hope, what's been the big aha moment, is that how important it is to have more pages and a higher average words per page. And we like to say at websites with more pages generate more traffic, more leads, and more sales. And that's why we're here. We want more traffic. We want more leads. Everyone wants more leads. That's why we're all here. And so that's how we're going to get it. And so now that we've got an understanding of what are the things to narrow in and focus on, let's talk about how to figure that out and some of the tools involved to make all of that happen, and how you can go and apply these insights in ways that are going to be valuable and help you grow your business. So the first piece we've got to do is we've got to measure all the content. Like we showed in the last couple of slides, it's important to get an understanding of what's happening in your competitive landscape and how does everybody measure up. If there's a company B, like that first example with the 70% search visibility, well, that'd be good for us to know going into it so we can create an approach that's going to help us win. That's all we're really looking for here is wins, and that leads us to more leads, more sales. So the first thing we've got to do is what we would call a content and search visibility audit. I didn't have any better words for it, so we're just going to call it an audit. We want to find 3 key pieces of information to help get started. The first is how many pages do you have? How many pages do your competitors have? There's actually a very simple and easily accessible tool that all of you have right in front of you right now to help get that information. Number 2 is the average number of words per page. And I have actually a free tool that you can use to help get you that information, again, pretty quickly. And the last part is what we call search visibility. How well are you coming up in search for the keywords that are important to you? And now that you have all 3 of these pieces of information, you can start to tie it together to figure out what pages with high words per page are creating that search visibility, right? Inputs and outputs, and how do they come together? So let's talk about the tools we have at your disposal to be able to make that happen. So the first one is Google. Google actually has built into it a way to tell how many pages you and your competitors have. So I know that a bunch of you are probably hopping over to another tab right now and following along. If that's the case, what you do is you type in site, S-I-T-E, colon, and then your URL or your competitor's URL right there. You hit return, and you're going to get at the top of your result about how many results. And this is how many pages Google knows of your website in its crawler, which actually may be different than how many actual pages you have on your website, which is surprising for a number of reasons. But this is a really great way to get a directional understanding of how many pages do you have on your website and how many do your competitors have. And if you're starting to log this over time, that's a really great way to understand who's growing and who's not, who's investing in something and who might not be. And if we're seeing consistently that you've got one competitor who's winning at search visibility but not investing in it, well, they seem like to be the ones to knock off. And so there's, again, more insight that we can gather through that. So that's how we figure out the number of pages on a website, again, in a very simplistic and easy to know way. The second is actually figuring out the average number of words per page is a lot harder than you'd think it'd be. In Microsoft Word, if you put a page together, it tells you at the bottom, this is how many words you have, and you could divide that by the number of pages you have and figure out that number pretty quickly. Figuring that out for a website, which is potentially several thousand pages, that's a little bit more difficult. So one of the tools we like to use here is called Screaming Frog. Screamingfrog.co.uk is their URL, and they have a free tool that allows you to crawl up to 500 pages at a time of your website or your competitors' websites. It's very easy to use and install, and you just type in the URL again at the top, run it, and it'll give you the word count for every single page on the website. And at the same time, now you're getting a log of every single page on the website, which is also valuable to your marketing team to help grow your business. Okay, last piece is talking about search visibility. And there are they're really the best tool to use for that, beyond what you can cobble together. So we actually created our own homegrown tool called data.bluecorona.com. But the best tool to use for that is actually a tool called Moz, M-O-Z. It's Moz.com. And if you plug in your website and 200 keywords, it'll spit out your search visibility, and it'll actually send you emails as those update. So that's a great way to keep in mind some of those. And really gathering all this data is just to help create the plan, which is, what are we going to do about the search visibility? Do we have a search visibility problem or not? And what undergirds all of good content search visibility plans is what we call track, test, tweak, and repeat. So by gathering all of the data, we've got a good tracking implementation in place. And then the question is, what are we going to test? Monitoring that, making tweaks, and repeating that process over and over again. And really, as you're creating the plan, it's really a matter of, out of those 200 keywords, which ones do we want to monitor and which ones do we want to take action on? And then of those, the two key things, again, that we found is which pages are we going to add to our website with content and keyword-rich optimizations to help us rank for those keywords. And then of the pages that we have, which ones do we want to optimize? And so if this sounds like a royal pain, which it is, we've got actually an offer just for you guys today. And so as part of our Vistage sponsorship, we're giving away complimentary summary digital competitive analyses to every Vistage member that requests one until the end of the year. And that covers all 5 parts of that framework that we looked at today. But it also gives you really rich knowledge on each of that. Every single Vistage member that has gotten one, and we've talked to about it, has had at least 5 to 10 great takeaways out of it. So it's chock full of action. There is no hard sales pitch. There is, I promise, no strings attached. And if that's something that you're really interested in, go to bluecorona.com/Vistage to get one. Now, if you were here on our last webinar, we had the same offer, but this one's even better. Between now and the Friday before Thanksgiving, if you request one of these competitive analyses, we'll actually include a deeper dive in what we call a content and search visibility audit. We'll do all that hard work for you and be able to give you an understanding of which keywords you should be paying attention to, what should be done with your website, and how should you take it forward. I know everyone here is busy, and thank you for a whole hour of your day, but we want to be able to give you more tools to propel you to your success rather than trying to figure all of this out. So again, if you're interested in that, head over to www.bluecorona.com/Vistage to be able to get that. All right, so we wanted to cover 3 things today. The first we wanted to cover was give you that framework for digital competitive analysis, which is those 5 key parts. We looked at tracking analytics, website accessibility, content, search visibility, and social and reviews. We want to talk about all 5 of those, and that gives us that high-level understanding of what's happening in a competitive landscape. Second piece we wanted to talk about, which is why content is more than just words on the page, and we covered a lot of that ground, is a lot of different ways that content can help. And the third piece, and really hopefully the most impactful part, was how you get top search visibility. And the 3 key and most impactful things that you guys as an audience can do today is, number 1, new website. Again, we didn't talk about that. Number 2, really high value targeting, variation targeting. And number 3 was content depth and content breadth. A lot of pages, high words per page. All right, and with that, Bill, I'm going to send it back over to you to take on some questions that we've received today.
I think that sound we hear is your website blowing up from all the people getting on there for a complimentary analysis. I hope.
Bill.
So Tyler, we did have quite a few questions coming in. I'm going to combine a couple questions into one here. With regards to content and amounts of content, you hear that people don't want to read large amounts of text. How do you reconcile that with words per page? And if you have more pages and more words per page, doesn't this slow down the ability to pull this up on your mobile?
Wow, those are great questions. So I'm going to start with the mobile one, and then I'll go back with the usage one. So mobile and speed is very important. We talked about that in the accessibility webinar. What we see is, as long as your website's accessibility is foundational, and so a lot of the optimizations that we make to new websites that we take on really are across the entire platform. So as long as you're not adding 10 or 15 really heavy images, text is very easy for mobile devices and for web pages to load. If you're having a slow user experience on your phone, it's probably because you have a slow website due to a variety of other factors, not necessarily the text on your page. Now, if we're going back into our very limited attention span, what we see as a golden place for content is somewhere between about 750 and 1,000 words per page, if appropriate, is a great average to go for. We've seen this even with heat mapping software that we apply to our clients' websites for customers or employees who want to become your customer or who want to work with you. We'll see that they'll actually read a lot of it. If you don't have anything to say, don't just fill it up to say it. But there are usually a lot of other layers that we can add on top of it to make that happen. So that 750 to 1,000 words is a pretty great place, and we see high user engagement that leads to high lead numbers. But your mileage may vary as well a little bit on that. So I hope that answered all of those questions.
Great job. So here's another one, and you may have said this, but maybe it bears repeating. How many web pages are ideal? Is there a minimum or a maximum?
Wow. Minimum of one. I'm just kidding. A maximum. I think it always goes back to it depends on what your goals are and what your competitive landscape is doing. So if your goal is to win for every single keyword that is important for your business, let's start with at least 200 of them, then it may make sense to have somewhere between 50 to 200 pages on your website. We at Blue Corona have over 2,000 pages on our website and are constantly optimizing all of them because we're in a very competitive landscape. SEO for SEO companies is quite competitive. So it really depends on your market and your goals. That's why I think, again, take advantage of the complementary analysis. Our teams would love to show you kind of what your competitors are doing and what you can do to outshine them.
Terrific. So just as a reminder, the slide deck is available in the handouts section. There's a link on the right-hand side of your screen, listeners. Okay, so let's talk about blogging. What should I do about blogging, and how do I know what to blog about?
That's a great question. So there are two ways to approach blogging. There's the way to approach blogging to help get you higher search visibility. And if that's the case, I would talk about past work that has been done or past services rendered, or kind of highlight good stories or stories of community involvement. It's really a storytelling place. There's an alternative way to look at blogging, which I think most businesses skip, which is blogging for the purpose of using it to grab people off of a social media site and drag them into their own turf. If that's the case, what we've seen with highest engagements on those platforms are human interest pieces. And so if you've got, again, great happy customers and you want to show those off, that's a great way to do that. And then use that as a way to communicate up through that channel, that social media channel, and bring those people on your website. So that's, I think, some of the different ways, and hopefully that gives you a handful of ideas there to get you started.
Terrific. Okay. Are videos good to add to my website, Tyler?
Ooh, videos. Bill and I are actually talking about this. Bill, thanks. Video. I think videos are. It depends on your audience, right? It's marketing. Everything depends on your audience. If you are looking, if you have a very visual product, say you're an architect, that's a great example of having videos on your website. Just don't have them start automatically because you don't know if somebody's going to be in Starbucks and have it pop up. If you're a wealth management firm and you really want to build that trust, that's a great place to do that. I think if you're trying to keep all the considerations in mind, I would make sure you're hosting videos off of your website because those can slow everything down, back to the first question that we got. But I think, again, videos are good if you're trying to build that trust and show off what you have. It just depends on your audience.
Well, to further ask about that, Tyler, I know that Google and their Hummingbird search, I don't know if Hummingbird is passé or not now, but they were talking about how active properties like video and audio would enhance the search engine capabilities. Is that still accurate?
A little bit. Really what I think they're looking for is, Google wants us to come back, right? Let's all say we're fighting against Google. Google wants us to come back. They want to serve the results that make their users happiest. And so ones that, show for higher times on site, things like videos can help do that. But we don't see that as a very significant search factor today, but I think it's a great conversion rate factor.
Okay, so it doesn't create a buzz by itself by having a video, but it might engage somebody to come and stay longer and come back, and all those things count, right?
Dead on.
Okay. All right, so let's move on to reviews. First of all, do reviews impact search visibility? And second, how do you handle negative reviews? Is there a way to push them down in the search listing so they don't pop up on the first page at least?
Yes, reviews definitely matter for search results. We actually saw this even for companies who might not want the reviews. Sometimes review websites will come up for your brand name, which is, again, really interesting. If you're a local service business, so let's say, again, you're wealth management and you provide staffing services or your plumbers, whatever that is, if you provide a local business, a local service, Google really wants to show that map listing that you might have seen before, and those star results very, very much matter to that. Also, your proximity to the person matters, but reviews do play a significant role there. When it comes to negative reviews, for most of the websites, if it's a pretty egregious review, if you request it to be removed many times, probably talking 24 times, it'll come down. But the best defense is a good offense. And so we're always encouraged to be actively asking your happy customers and your happy employees for reviews. We're actually going to be talking about those on our next Fridays with Vistage webinar. So there's a lot more tactics we're going to cover and some really interesting insights we have there as well.
Terrific. Okay, let's move on. We have a question from a listener who is doing a big review and update of their site to increase content and optimization. Okay, Tyler, what are the obvious big wins of that exercise?
Well, I think the first big win is at getting a new website. So congratulations to that. As we saw in those search factors, that's a big opportunity there. I would say the big obvious ones usually aren't big and obvious, and with search being so customized, it's always it depends. So more pages, words per page, variation targeting, and those are all important, but it also depends within the context of your competition. That's why competitive analysis is so important. So as we look at what your competitors have and how they're performing, that's going to give a lot of insights to some of that. And then sometimes we'll even do it in reverse, where we'll go look at the keywords that you want to rank for and who else is ranking for those maybe outside of your competitors and what are they doing. So you can kind of get the alchemy together, if you will, to put that all together. So the basics would be congratulations on a new website. Keep showing all the different variations of the products or services or products and services that you have, and make sure your words per page is, I would say, push it beyond the 750 mark, and you'll really start to see some traction there. But then overlaying that, it depends on your competitive landscape.
Okay, can you comment on the optimum type and maybe size of a lead magnet that might bring people back to, for instance, a survey or a white paper, and is more content better than less content for something like that?
So for those who aren't familiar, a lead magnet is what you put behind. So you say like, hey, I have an ebook, and you give me your email address. I will give you the ebook in return. And I think it's all about value on that. So as you're looking to, so if we go back to if you're providing a B2B machining service, right? So you're providing machining services to, companies that are like big oil companies. You need something that's going to have technical specs in it, a couple of examples that you've done before. It's going to be a pretty beefy lead magnet. Whereas if you're providing healthcare services or healthcare staffing, you might want to show off a handful of examples of happy placements that you've made and how you've made their lives easier. Or if you want to go on the flip side, you've got some HR people at large hospital chains that you want to show that you make their lives easier. And so I think on that, it always depends on your audience and what you want to do. I'd say a minimum of a good sturdy page, but it's, I think more value is better. I think we in the Vistage community really like that. We want you to be the subject matter expert. So, show us that and really show that off.
Terrific. One last question. How do I find out who my online competitors are?
Perfect question. I think there's two great tools you could use to do that. The first one is Google. Google, and you can search for one or two great keywords that really matter for your business and describe what you're doing. So if you're doing, again, precision machining in Chicago, Illinois, precision machining Chicago, Illinois, see who shows up, maybe a few other suburbs. If you're not really too sure, Amazon has a tool called Alexa, not to be confused with the small device that will sit in your kitchen. So that's alexa.com/site info, SITEINFO. And if you go there, it has a little box at the top. You can put your URL in, and about 3/4 of the way down the page, it'll actually list what Amazon thinks are your handful of competitors. So great little tool there.
Tyler Yost, great topic and very interesting information and well delivered. Thank you so much for joining us today on Fridays with Vistage.
Well, thank you, Bill, and thank you everyone for joining us, and have a great weekend.
Well, look at the time. It's time for us to tell you about the upcoming webinars with Fridays with Vistage. October 27th, 2017 at 10 a.m. Pacific. Help Wanted, new report outlines how to find and develop talent. You won't want to miss this webinar with Kathleen Quinn Vota, one of the highest ranked Fridays with Vistage speakers that we have. Also, November 17th, Customer Growth, Strategies for SMB Success in 2018. Again, that's November 17th, 10 a.m. Pacific. Please join us, and thank you so much for joining us on Fridays with Vistage. And on behalf of Vistage Worldwide, this is Bill Black wishing you continued success. This concludes today's webinar.